Can you actually build a comfortable life as an expat in Ho Chi Minh City on less than $800 a month? Let's find out. Not as a tourist passing through for a couple of weeks, but as someone who actually lives here. In this video, I'll break down my real monthly expenses in Saigon. Not just rent, utilities, restaurants, transportation, coffee, and social life, but also all the smaller expenses people usually forget to mention. Visa costs, haircuts, taxis, live music nights, health insurance, and everything else that adds up in everyday life. Saigon is a massive city with endless ways to spend money, but this video is not about rooftop luxury, tourist attractions, or the polished Instagram version of expat life. This is about everyday living in Vietnam's biggest metropolis, adapting to the energy, finding your favorite coffee spots and neighborhoods, building a routine, optimizing your budget, and slowly starting to feel at home instead of just passing through. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear picture of what an $800 monthly budget can realistically get you in Ho Chi Minh, and whether this kind of lifestyle could make sense for your own life abroad. I'll also talk about the downsides and deal breakers, things people often ignore, but I think are important to consider. So let's get into it. But before we get into my monthly budget, there's an obvious question. Why Ho Chi Minh? Fair question. The city is huge, loud, crowded, humid, and constantly moving. Motorbikes everywhere. Traffic that sometimes feels like organized insanity. No peaceful mountain views. No calm old world atmosphere. Just a giant southern megacity full of neon signs, glass towers, hidden alleys, and non-stop life. So why do so many foreigners choose to live here? Because Saigon has momentum. It pulls you in. It's ambitious, energetic, messy, and strangely addictive. This isn't a city that quietly sits in the background of your life. You interact with it every day. You find your regular coffee spot, your favorite com-tam place, your shortcut through some random alley, your evening neighborhood routine. After a while, the chaos stops feeling overwhelming. It just starts feeling normal. With a population of over 10 million, this city is massive. But once you understand the rhythm, daily life becomes surprisingly convenient. Things stay open late. Food is everywhere. Coffee isn't just a drink. It's practically part of the social infrastructure. Step outside your apartment, and the city is already happening around you. The expat scene here is large and diverse. Remote workers, entrepreneurs, creatives, teachers, long-term travelers, and plenty of people who came for a few months and somehow never really left. Some just keep doing the 3-month visa routine again and again. The city is affordable, international, full of opportunities, and easier to settle into than many people expect. Another thing I love about Saigon is the underground music scene. Indie rock bands, local jam sessions, jazz nights, and a lot of very talented artists. Most of them are also quite open, and after a few visits, you often end up hearing their personal stories too. The atmosphere is also very different from northern Vietnam. No cold winters or gray seasonal moods. Instead, you get tropical heat, sudden rainstorms, warm evenings, and a lifestyle built around iced coffee and air conditioning. Traditional markets sit next to luxury malls, and old street vendors operate in the shadow of modern skyscrapers. The whole place feels like it's constantly building, changing, and expanding. Let's start with the biggest monthly expense, rent. I'm not talking about luxury condos with infinity pools, rooftop lounges, private gyms, and security guards greeting you in the lobby. Saigon has plenty of those, especially in places like Tao Dien or District 7, with modern towers, international supermarkets, and neighborhoods that sometimes barely feel like Vietnam anymore. But that's a completely different budget. I'm talking about something more realistic, a simple studio or compact one-bedroom apartment, furnished, functional, and clean, air conditioning, reliable Wi-Fi, and enough comfort to actually enjoy living there. When foreigners first move to Ho Chi Minh City, they usually look at a few familiar areas. District 1 is the obvious starting point. It's central, energetic, packed with cafes, restaurants, co-working spaces, nightlife, and non-stop activity. Convenient? Absolutely. But rent is higher, apartments can be smaller than expected, and living in the busiest part of the city every day can eventually wear you down. Then there's Tao Dien, probably the most famous expat neighborhood in the city. International cafes, gyms, yoga studios, imported groceries, modern apartments, and a strong foreign community. Life there feels easy and comfortable, which is exactly why so many newcomers choose it. But that convenience definitely shows up in the rent. After a while, many expats start looking elsewhere. In my case, I found a simple but beautiful apartment in District 4. Still close to the center, but more local, more residential, and much better value. Less expat bubble, more everyday Saigon. Neighborhood coffee shops, street vendors, local markets, and family businesses. And when I say local, I mean it. I barely see any foreigners on my street. Just friendly locals, great food, and very strong Vietnamese coffee. I found my apartment through a Facebook group called Apartment Hunting for Expats, which is actually where I'd recommend starting. Expats move often, leases change quickly, and landlords usually want tenants fast. That means lots of listings, direct communication, and no agent fees. I pay $8 million per month, and honestly, I'm very happy with it. Small but functional kitchen, air conditioning, a tiny balcony, a good shower, lots of sunlight, a bright, clean space with everything I actually need. I'm also within walking distance of the business district, shopping malls, bus stops, and pretty much all the infrastructure I use daily. Realistically, a furnished studio or small one-bedroom apartment like this usually costs somewhere between 7 and 10 million per month, depending on the area and building. For that price, you can normally expect a private apartment, internet, basic furniture, air conditioning, and simple building management. Nothing luxurious, but more than enough to live comfortably. Utilities and internet here are generally affordable. But unlike Hanoi, Saigon stays hot pretty much all year, so the air conditioning gets turned on the moment you get home. That means electricity is usually the biggest utility bill. In my apartment, it averages around $800 per month, mainly because electricity is around $4,000 per kilowatt, and also because I don't spend that much time at home. Internet is straightforward. In many long-term apartments, especially places aimed at foreigners, Wi-Fi is already installed and often included in the rent. Water is cheap. I've never paid more than $200 a month. So overall, for electricity, water, and internet, around 1 million Vietnamese dong per month is a realistic estimate for a small to medium apartment, although your air conditioning usage will usually decide the final number. One quick tip: always check how utilities are billed before signing a lease, and especially electricity rates, and whether internet is included. And while not technically a utility, cleaning services are easy to arrange and very affordable too. I pay around $400,000 per month for weekly cleaning. Good value, time saving, and also a simple way to support local workers. In Ho Chi Minh City, like in much of Southeast Asia, cooking every meal at home just isn't how many people live. Plenty of apartments, especially smaller studios, come with basic kitchens rather than full cooking setups. And honestly, once you see food prices here, eating out often makes more sense than shopping, prepping, and cooking every day. Unless you genuinely love cooking. Personally, even though I had a kitchen, I haven't cooked a single meal so far. I just don't enjoy cooking for myself. Local restaurants, food stalls, and casual eateries are everywhere. And for some reason in Vietnam, grabbing food outside is often cheaper than cooking the same dish at home, no matter how you calculate it. For groceries, I keep things simple. Fruit and nuts, coffee for slower mornings, maybe some yogurt, snacks, and a few basics for evenings when I don't feel like going anywhere. If you shop locally, neighborhood markets, Circle K, Family Mart, 7-Eleven, and avoid imported products, groceries stay very affordable. Around 1 to 1.5 million per month, roughly 40 to 60 US dollars, is usually enough for breakfast supplies and small extras. Eating out is where the city really shines. I'm talking about the small family-run places where the owners literally close the doors once they sell everything they prepared for the day, even if it's still 11 in the morning. Honestly, I think I've eaten at almost every restaurant in my neighborhood, and I have zero complaints. Fresh food, generous portions, and smiling owners while I struggle to order in Vietnamese. You can get a full local meal like cam tam, pho bo, or a bowl of Southern-style noodle soup for around 30 to 60,000, roughly $1 to $2, at street stalls or neighborhood restaurants. Meals are cooked fresh, portions are big, and flavors are bold and satisfying. Even if you eat every single meal at restaurants, somewhere around 3 to 4 million per month is still a very realistic food budget. Some people worry about eating street food daily, but this is Saigon. Many vendors have been serving the same dishes for years, sometimes decades. Tiny places with plastic stools often produce meals better than expensive restaurants. The quality, freshness, and variety tend to surprise people who are new to the city. Of course, eventually you'll want a break from local food. Sushi, burgers, brunch, pizza, healthy bowls, or a more polished Vietnamese restaurant. The city has endless options for that too. A casual sit-down meal usually costs around $1 to $200,000 and more if you go for upscale dining or imported cuisine. Do that 10 times a month, and you're adding around $1 to $2 million to your budget. In the end, food costs here are incredibly flexible. You can live very cheaply, mix local meals with international comfort food, or upgrade your eating habits whenever you feel like it. If you've watched my other videos, you probably already know I'm fully addicted to coffee at this point, and I'm not even trying to hide it anymore. For many reasons, I genuinely have a separate budget just for coffee when I'm in Vietnam. First of all, it's ridiculously affordable. Sometimes a cafe den starts at $15,000. I've even seen 12. And somehow it's still strong, quality Robusta that wakes you up immediately after the first sip. If you know how this is economically possible, let me know in the comments. But coffee in Saigon is more than just cheap caffeine. It's part of how the city functions. People don't just grab a coffee and leave. They sit, they work, they meet friends, take calls, and watch traffic chaos unfold behind a glass of iced coffee. And after living here for a while, you realize you've slowly started doing exactly the same thing. Cafes are everywhere. Tiny local spots with plastic stools on the sidewalk. Hidden cafes inside old buildings and narrow alleys. Minimalist specialty places full of laptops, air conditioning, and people who look very productive. Whether you want to work, socialize, escape the heat, or just sit somewhere with good Wi-Fi and AC, there's always an option nearby. A traditional Vietnamese coffee, cafe den, or cafe swada usually costs around $20,000 to $30,000. Coconut coffee, salted coffee, and more creative drinks tend to be between $40 and $60. Even specialty cafes stay quite affordable, and most of the time you're still comfortably under $3 for a latte or similar drink. Even with 1 or 2 coffees a day, you're looking at roughly $1.6 million per month. And honestly, many expats, myself included, don't really bother with formal co-working memberships. Saigon cafes are the co-working scene. Vietnam is the world's second largest coffee producer, so naturally coffee culture runs deep here. But while working out of cafes at first feels exciting and simple, living abroad long-term brings up a lot of practical questions people rarely talk about. What address do you use for banking? What about taxes, mail, residency, or keeping everything legally organized back home while you're constantly moving between countries? That's where companies like Savvy Nomad become useful. This is actually something I've been looking into myself. They help Americans living abroad establish Florida residency, save on taxes, and manage their mail remotely. Honestly, this stuff matters more than people realize. Once you have a proper setup behind the scenes, life abroad starts feeling much more stable and sustainable long-term, instead of constantly improvising everything month by month. So if you're seriously thinking about building a lifestyle abroad, definitely check them out. You can click the link in the description or scan the QR code. You can also use the code NOMADNEST for a $50 discount. Getting around is surprisingly easy and smooth. Although smooth is probably not the word I'd use. The city gives you plenty of transportation options, from public buses and ride-hailing apps to the brand new metro system that people in Saigon are quite proud of. But the real king of transportation here is still Vietnam's unofficial national sport, navigating traffic chaos on two wheels. Let's start with public transport. City buses are one of the cheapest ways to move around. A typical ride costs around $6,000 to $10,000, just a few cents, and the network covers a huge part of the city. The newer electric buses are actually clean, modern, air-conditioned, and quite comfortable. Still, buses aren't the first choice for many foreigners, or even many locals. Traffic slows things down, routes take some getting used to, and during peak hours they can get crowded. But if you're budget conscious or patient enough to learn the system, they're absolutely usable. And yes, Ho Chi Minh City finally has a metro system. After years of delays, rumors, and endless coming soon jokes, it actually exists. That's pretty exciting. But right now only one line is operating, so unless you live directly along that route, for most people it's more of a nice bonus than a real daily transport solution. In reality, most expats rely heavily on ride-hailing apps because they're fast, convenient, and still pretty cheap compared to many other countries. Grab dominates the scene, Bee is popular too, and booking a ride takes seconds. A short motorbike trip usually costs around $25,000 to $50,000, roughly $1 to $2, depending on distance, traffic, and how the pricing behaves during rush hour. Car rides cost more, but still relatively affordable. If you want maximum freedom, renting or owning a scooter is extremely common in Saigon. In a city built around motorbikes, having your own bike completely changes the experience. Monthly rentals for a decent scooter usually cost around $2 million, depending on the model and condition. Many long-term expats eventually buy a used scooter because it becomes cheaper than renting over time. Fuel is also affordable, so daily riding doesn't cost much. Personally, I don't rent a scooter. I mostly use ride-hailing bikes, occasional app-based bicycles, and walk whenever the distance makes sense. Although, this is Saigon. Walking sounds great in theory, but with the humidity, it's not exactly fun unless it's early morning or late evening. So for me, transportation is mostly a mix of grab rides, app transport, and occasional public transit. And I usually stay under $1 million per month. One thing I genuinely love about living in Ho Chi Minh City is that you don't need a huge budget to have a full life here. The city has constant energy, social, busy, slightly chaotic. Compared to Hanoi, the expat and social scene here feels bigger and more active. There are live music nights, language exchanges, random meetups, rooftop bars, cafes, networking events. It always feels like something is happening somewhere. Personally, even just walking around the city is already an activity for me. The modern areas, endless local neighborhoods, shopping malls, parks, cafes, Saigon gives you a lot to explore. There are plenty of gyms, and they're fairly affordable, usually around $500,000 per month for a basic local gym. But honestly, I stopped going to the gym since I've developed a new habit: working out and jogging in parks and playing Da Cao, Vietnamese foot badminton, with locals. Parks here are actually great. They're huge, well-maintained, full of runners, exercise groups, dancers, badminton players, and people who somehow have unlimited energy before sunrise. And watching older locals stay active year after year is strangely motivating. Then there's the cultural side of the city. It has deep historical roots, and you still feel that older layer everywhere. Temples, old buildings, Buddhist and Hindu temples where you can slow down for a couple of hours, burn some incense, listen to chanting, or just sit quietly for a moment. For me, that's one of the best ways to unwind. Social life in Saigon is easy. Casual bars, craft beer spots, rooftop venues, open mics, co-working meetups, community events. Many places don't even charge an entrance fee. You just show up, order something, meet people, and let the evening happen. And the nightlife here goes way deeper than just cheap beers. Places like Acoustic Bar or Thai Pub are great spots to watch local artists, live rock sets, and sometimes even these small underground jazz sessions you don't really expect to find in a city this big. And despite being a giant city, meeting people here is surprisingly straightforward. Expat groups, sports communities, hobby circles, business events, brunch groups. Once you participate a little, the social side of the city opens up naturally. For me, it usually comes to around $1 million per month. Finally, let's talk about the smaller everyday costs. The things that rarely make it into cost of living videos, but quietly become part of normal life once you actually live somewhere. Mobile data in Vietnam is very affordable too. I use a local Vinaphone SIM, and it's been reliable for daily use. My monthly plan gives me more than enough data for 125,000. Haircuts are cheap too. A simple local barber usually charges around 100,000. Fast, straightforward, and efficient. Then there are the boring but necessary purchases: shampoo and toothpaste, soap, detergent, random household items you somehow keep buying forever. These basics usually cost me under $200 per month. And with Family Mart and 7-Eleven everywhere, grabbing essentials is never a problem. When you add all these smaller expenses together, somewhere around 400,000 per month, roughly $15, is a realistic estimate for everyday extras. Now let's bring everything together. All the numbers you see on the screen are based on my real monthly expenses in Saigon, what I actually spend, and what I see most expats around me spending for a normal lifestyle. Nothing luxury, nothing extreme, but also not a tight backpacker setup. Just a comfortable, realistic way of living in a big, fast-moving Asian city. When I add everything up, my total monthly expenses come in at just under 21 million dong, less than $800. That includes everything: rent, food, transport, coffee, internet, healthcare, going out, and all the small daily costs that quietly build up over time. Of course, budgets can vary a lot. You can live cheaper if you fully commit to a local lifestyle. Smaller room, mostly street food, minimal extras. Or you can easily double or even triple this if you go for modern apartments, imported products, rooftop bars, and a more Western-style routine. This city supports both extremes. For me, this middle ground feels right: comfortable, flexible, and still very affordable for what you get in return. And just to put it into perspective, the average local salary in Ho Chi Minh City is often about half of this monthly budget. So while this feels very affordable for many foreigners, it's actually quite a comfortable level of living here. If you think I missed something, or your version of life in Saigon would look different, let me know in the comments. Visas in Vietnam are probably one of the most confusing parts of living here. The rules can change, so I'll keep this simple and based on how things work right now. There's no real digital nomad visa, so most expats just use standard tourist visas. The most common one is the 90-day e-visa. You apply online, pay $25 for the single entry visa, and get it in a few days. Pretty straightforward, but it's still short term. After that, you have to leave the country and come back on a new visa. For a lot of people here, that just becomes part of the routine. If you're working for a company or running a registered business, you can get a work permit and residence card, which is the more stable long-term option. But it comes with more paperwork. And that's basically it. Nothing too complicated, just a system you get used to over time. Before you start thinking about moving to Ho Chi Minh City, there are a few realities that don't usually show up in travel videos. First, the noise. Saigon is not a quiet city. It's constantly moving, constantly alive. Motorbikes flow through the streets, horns never really stop. Street vendors call out from every corner, and there's always some construction happening nearby. At first, it feels like chaos. Then your brain just adapts to it. But if you need silence and calm, this city will test you. Then there's the heat and humidity. There's no real cool season here in the way many people are used to. It's warm almost all year, and the humidity can hit you the moment you step outside. Air conditioning stops being a comfort and becomes something you just plan your day around. Traffic is another thing you have to get used to. It looks chaotic, and honestly, it is. But it still somehow works. Thousands of scooters moving together with their own rhythm. After a while, you stop overthinking it. You just walk, stay calm, and let the flow move around you. And finally, the pace. Saigon moves fast. People move fast, work fast, live fast. Cafes are full, streets are busy, everything feels like it's always in motion. Some people love that energy, others feel drained by it after a while. So yes, Ho Chi Minh City is loud, hot, and intense. Not soft, not slow, not peaceful. But if you match its energy, it can feel incredibly alive. If not, it can be overwhelming. For me, that intensity is exactly what makes it interesting, and I absolutely love this city. It never feels static, and that's probably why so many people end up staying longer than they planned.